Hello everyone, Weary Bard back here with you, and after a short break where we did an EQ Easter egg video in celebration of Easter, we are back in line with our TNT series of videos, Total Newbie Training, and today we're going to be looking at the details and creating a Paladin. So let's jump right into it. So as a Paladin, they are part of the tank series. There are three major tanks in EverQuest: the Warrior, Paladin, and Shadow Knight. And the Paladin is kind of a hybrid. They're a mix between a tank and a caster to some degree. They will get some cleric spells starting at level 9, and they can heal, they can buff, they can do some utility, and they bring a lot to the table actually. But when it comes down to it, your group is going to expect you to tank. So we're going to look at how to distribute points when we create the Paladin, and a little bit of what to wear and what to use thereafter after you've created it, so that you can be a good tank for your groups. So let's take a look at the races that can play the Paladin, and there are 5 of them actually. So the first one is Dwarf, and actually the Dwarf is probably arguably the best race to be a Paladin, simply because of the stats that they start with. So they start with great strength, great stamina, and some of the stats you want to take a look at as a Paladin, of course, strength and stamina. Stamina because you are a tank, you want to be able to take the hits. Strength because you're going to be wearing plate and it helps with carrying things, but also wisdom. And the cleric line of healers and casters, they use wisdom as their mana pool. So the more mana that you have, the more spells that you can cast, and the more wisdom that you have, the more mana that you have. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So that's one thing that you also want to take in consideration when you're creating your Paladin. The other thing to look at too is agility. Paladin a little bit different than the Warrior. The Warrior wanted dexterity for the weapon procs because he wants to do the damage, and some of those weapons will proc different things to help him with the damage and keep aggro. For the Paladin, it's a little bit different. You can certainly put some into dexterity because you're going to get weapons that proc later, but I think a more important skill or attribute that most people don't think about it for a Paladin is agility. Now, old school, you think of agility and dexterity both for something like a rogue or something that's, to be sure-footed and things like that. But in this game, agility also helps you not get hit. So as a Paladin tank, that is, that's important, not getting hit. So I think strength, stamina, agility, and wisdom are your 4 main abilities to take a look at. And so Dwarf brings a lot to the table, especially with the strength and the stamina. He starts with a pretty decent wisdom at 88. His agility is a little shy at 70. So I would probably put some into agility and maybe bump that wisdom up, because honestly his strength and stamina are pretty decent to start with, and you can get those brought up with gear inside of the game later on pretty well. So let's take a look at the Dwarf race real quick. Some of the attributes: they are a neutral, actually they're a good aligned race. They do have a couple racial skills specific to them. One is they start with a sense heading of 50, which is really nice because when you're first starting out, that sense heading is going to give you direction. So if you're starting at 50, you're more apt to be able to tell what direction you're facing and not get lost as much. So that's kind of nice. They also have infravision, which you spoke about in the past. That helps you see in the dark. Some not quite as good as ultravision, but infravision is better than being blind in the dark. And they have a kind of a neat little characteristic called barrel roll. So if you were to do a jump, the Dwarf kind of does a forward roll, and it doesn't have any benefit to combat or anything like that. It's more of a cosmetic thing, but it's kind of neat and very fitting of a Dwarf, right? They also have a +5 to magic and poison resists, and resist will come into play, as we spoke about before, later on in the game when you're getting into the major dungeons and raiding. So they start in Paladin. That's the only city they can start in. That's the Dwarven city, and they do not have an experience modifier, so it doesn't take them any more experience or any less experience than the average class to gain level, and they can only wear small armor. So that's something to take into consideration when you're thinking about the race too. Dwarves can only wear small, so if you're in a place that's dropping medium, bronze armor and it's looking really great, you can't wear it. But there's enough places that drop the small too, so it's not a huge deal. I wouldn't let that go into factoring in what race you play. So that is the Dwarf. Like I said, arguably probably the best one to start as a paladin. And dwarves are fun. They're fun to role play, so if you're into that, they love to battle and they love to go to the bar and drink an ale or six and tell about those battles to anyone who would be wise enough to listen, I guess. So, all right, so moving down the line in the races, the next one is the Erudite. So we'll click on the Erudite over here and click on Paladin. Now, the Erudites, of course, they are traditionally a caster race, but they can play a Paladin. And they're an interesting Paladin because of they worship a certain deity, and quite honestly, they look great in their armor. But let's look at their stats first because, to be real honest, their strength and stamina is quite low. Strength is at 70 to start with, stamina at 75, and their agility is 70 as well. So those three stats probably on the low end. Their wisdom starts at 88 though, however, so I think they start with the highest wisdom. Actually, no, the highest is the high elf, but Erudites are pretty up there. So wisdom is real easy to bring up inside of the game with gear, necklaces, earrings, rings, and other gear that you wear too. So it's not too big of a deal. If you're going to pick a Erudite, I would probably put the points into strength, stamina, and agility. Now remember, along the lines of playing the Paladin, you're going to be wearing plate. So whichever race you pick, strength is going to be important for the simple fact that if you're wearing full plate armor and you only have 70 strength, you're probably going to be at about 68 stone once you get fully geared out in your plate. So you're not going to be able to carry much more either. So I would probably pump up the strength slightly, definitely the stamina because you want to go toe to toe, you want to be able to take that damage, and the agility so that you're not getting hit. So those three main things on the Erudite. So let's talk about the Erudite race a little bit. They are kind of unique. They have some stats good to them. Obviously, they're intelligent, but they also have a couple of cons, I guess. If you're thinking about pros and cons, their biggest con is that they don't have anything to help them see at night. So that is kind of a hindrance. It's not game stopping. It's not a reason why I would not pick a Erudite, because there are items in the game that'll help you with casting light on yourself and the area around you so you can see a little bit better. It's not anywhere near having infravision, but it can help you at least navigate and see what's around you. So I wouldn't let that determine if you don't want to play Erudite unless you're really, really bothered by not being able to see very well in the dark. There are things that will help with that. So they do have a -5 to disease resist and a +5 to magic resist. Come into play again later on in the game. They can start in either Uridin or Peniel. I do think the Paladins have a choice to start in either one. Don't quote me on that. They do not have an experience modifier, so no extra XP or doesn't take them more or less XP than the average class, and they can wear medium armor. And speaking of armor, I think that the Erudites are one of the best looking in plate armor, quite honestly. Aside from the Dark Elves, I think they're probably number 2 in the way that they look. It's the way that the skin shows on them. The plate looks really cool on them, and for some reason they can get some cool colors. If they do the racial armor quests, the result is some armor that is really cool looking, and I like the way that they look. So one good reason to pick a Erudite. Obviously not their strongest stats, but if you're into playing something that's not popular, not the mainstream, flavor of the month kind of thing, then Erudite is probably your pick. So moving along down the line, we have Half Elf is next, and as you know, Half Elf is just that. They are half elf and half human, which gives them a distinctive look. They look human pretty much except for the ears, and they're built about the same as the human. Now for their stats, they start mediocre to low, I would say, especially in wisdom. Wisdom starts at 65, so if you're going to play a half elf Paladin, I would definitely crank up that wisdom, probably to the max that you can. Put some in strength and stam if you want to. Agility's at 90. I wouldn't worry about that because you can get more gear for that. That's a pretty good starting agility at 90. Strength is at 80. Stamina is at 75. So between all that, I would probably definitely put it in wisdom and stamina if you're going to be starting at half elf. So let's look at the half-elf race. They are a neutral aligned race. They do have one racial trait, and that's infravision. So again, they can see in the dark. That's really nice to have. Their starting cities are they have several of them. Surefall Glade is only for the half-elf rangers, but I think the other classes can start in either Freeport, Keelathan, or Kenos. And if you remember, Freeport is at one end of the Antarctica continent, Kenos is at the other end, and way on a different continent of Otis is the Wood Elf starting city, which is Keelathan. So the half-elves can start there too. They do not have an experience modifier, so again, no more nor less XP needed, and they can only wear medium armor. Now, their armor looks pretty decent. I like the way they look, not quite as much as the Dark Elf or the Erudite, to be honest. But, you know, it's not too bad, actually. It's a good-looking armor. Their helm isn't bad. It has, it's kind of like a nice plate helmet with this wing on the front of it or something like that. It's hard to explain, but you'll see it if you play one. It's not ugly, it's not beautiful, but it's, again, not a deciding factor for me to play a half-elf or not. So, you know, play what you like is what I say. So that is the half-elf. I would say they're probably in the mediocre end of playing a paladin, but again, if you want to play something that's not flavor of the month and what everybody else plays, then sure, by all means, give yourself a little bit of a challenge. I like that. All right, next on the line is the High Elf. Now, the High Elves, as you will notice, they start with some great wisdom at 100. Now, the High Elves is traditionally a casting class. They're known for their intelligence and wisdom, but they can indeed play a paladin, which is the only melee class that they can play. They start with really low strength at 65, pretty low stamina at 70. Their agility is not bad at 85. So I would not even bother with wisdom, but I would definitely put some into strength and stamina, because you're going to want that strength for the plate and to carry more, and then the stamina for going toe to toe. 85 isn't bad agility. You can get that up later. That's not bad to start with. I would probably on the High Elf definitely focus on the strength and stam. So let's talk about the High Elf race. They are usually pretty decent races to play. They're kind of fun. I kind of like them because they I would role play one kind of as the prestigious kind of snobby kind of thing, but you don't have to. But they are predominantly a good alignment class. Their one racial is they do have infravision, so they can see at night. Their starting city is the only one they can start in is Felwith, and that is the High City. And if you were to stand outside of Felwith, it is definitely a High City construction. You can definitely, a half-elf construction. You can definitely tell that the High Elves would have built something like this. It's very noble, very upper echelon looking from the outside, and even the inside too. Even the guards look kind of like that too. So they have no experience modifier, so again, no more experience or no less than any other normal class. The neat thing about the half elf, and this could help you determine if you want to play one or not, they can wear both medium and small armor because of their stature. They are an elf, but they're a small stature elf, so they can do medium or small. So that's kind of nice when you're battling in different places and small armor drops or medium armor drops. You have the pick to wear. They look pretty decent in their armor. I'm not a big proponent on their helm. Their helm looks like kind of like a baseball helmet turned backwards. It's a little weird looking, but it's not ugly. But it's not, I would probably, if I were playing a half-elf paladin, I would probably go into the settings and turn my helm off. And you can do that. If you don't like any of the helms that any of the races look, the look of them, you can certainly turn that off inside of the settings. So that is the half-elf. Fun to roleplay. I don't know if they would be the best paladin as far as stat-wise, but they would be fun to play for sure. So the last but not least is the human, and going back to our other videos, we've discussed that the human is kind of the run-of-the-mill. They are human. That's exactly what they are. They're kind of jack of all trades and master of not any of them. They start with, I would say, medium run-of-the-line kind of stats. So their strength starts at 85, stamina at 80, agility is 75, and wisdom at 80. So you can see they're right down that center point. So for the human, I would probably beef up that wisdom a little bit. Probably the agility, bring that up into the 80s, and strength and stam. So the bad thing about divvying up points for the human is they only get 20 to put in, and you have probably at least 3 stats to put those points into, maybe 4 if you're looking at agility and wisdom too. So a little bit more difficult to create in the beginning, but again, you know what, later on you can get those stats through gear inside of the game too. So I wouldn't let it deter you from playing a human. Obviously, not a huge role play aspect. You can certainly role play a human in any form or fashion, but I'm not a pretty big. I don't play many humans because I play this game to be something other than what I am, I guess. But hey, by all means, play a human, because you can play it evil. You can play any way you want to. So let's look at the humans' racials. They are a neutral aligned race. So which is pretty good. You can go pretty much anywhere. The good races have a more difficult time getting closer to the kind of neutral and almost evil aligned things, but neutrals have a little bit better time. They only have 1 racial, and they start with +5 fire resist, and they can start in either Freeport or Kinos, depending on what end of the world you want to start in. And they have no experience modifier. The only armor that they can wear is medium, and their armor looks pretty decent. I would say the plate looks good on the human, except for I'm not a big fan of their helm either. It looks like a bucket head, but you know what, hey, roleplay it like the Black Knight in Monty Python's Holy Grail or something, and you can always turn that off again. So human, run-of-the-mill paladin, but again, you can beef those stats up, and certainly not a bad selection for it. So if you were to ask me to what I would want to play, I'm going to start a dwarf. So we're going to go back to the dwarf. We're going to go into the game a little bit, talk about some of the skills that you want to definitely focus on as a paladin so that you can be a good tank for your group and bring that to the table. So we're going to pick a dwarf paladin. We're going to put points into agility. We're going to bring that up to as much as I can put in there. The wisdom and the strength I can do later, so I put it all in agility for the dwarf. So that brings it to 90. Wisdom is 88. Wisdom is real easy to bring up in the game again, so we'll worry about that later on. And strength and stam are good starters right there. So we're going to get a name. Let's see what it gets us. I don't like that name really. Let's see what we can get. Get more. That sounds kind of dwarven, doesn't it? So let's see what it takes that. All right, it gave it to us. So we're going to get in again. We're going to be talking about some of the things you want to focus on to be a good tank for your group. I guess one of them we should talk about is the weapon. Now, the paladin, you can use either a 2-handed weapon, or you can use a 1-hander and a shield, which is what most of them do, because you are a tank, and you're going to be able to tank and take more damage with a shield than with a 2-hander that's not going to help you with that defense. So I would recommend a 1-hander and a shield if you're tanking. If you're in a group and you're just doing DPS, you can certainly switch over to a 2-hander, because you're going to be able to get a lot of damage output from a 2-hander as well too. So I'm going to move some of these windows over into the center so we can talk about them easier and you can see them better. We're going to turn that off though. We don't want any tips. You can certainly leave those tips that come up readily available to you if you're new to the game, because they do help you out a lot. So let's look at this group of skill buttons here. I'm going to remove that melee attack out of there because I don't put that in there. I have it set to my V key as in Victor, but you can set that to any key that makes sense for you. Just do automatic combat. You just press that key and you start fighting. So mine's set to the V key. So what I do with these here is I set them up how I want to use them number wise, because this will be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. Now I put my range attack in number 4, and I keep my bash at 2 and taunt at 3. So let's talk a little bit about these skills. And so bash is what you use to kind of stun and shock the mob. It does a little bit of damage and it uses your shield, so you have to have a shield to use bash. But it's kind of neat to stun, especially if you're up against a caster. I think it interrupts their spell casting, and so it also does a little bit of damage. So, and let's talk about range attack. Now, normally, if you don't have a bow or anything to pull, let's say you're in a group and your group is sitting back here and guard stump is the mob. These 2 guards are your mobs that you want to do. You want to pull back to the group. Odds are, as the tank, you're probably going to be the puller as well. So that means you're going to be going up getting that mob's attention and pulling it back to wherever the group is sitting back here. Okay, so if you don't have a bow or anything, that's what you have to do. You have to go up there, get in his face, and you're going to have to do damage to him or get up in, real close melee range to get his attention. So A, you're probably going to take some damage doing that, and B, you have a very good chance of getting stunned if you do that, because you're face to face with them, and a lot of the creatures out there will stun you, and that's a couple seconds of delay, which you're going to be able to take more damage before you can run back to the group. However, if you have a bow and you use this range attack skill button right here, I can pull him from a distance. And what that's going to do, I just hit it once, it's just one arrow. It's going to get his attention, it's going to pull him to you. So after I shoot my arrow, I have time to turn around and run back to the group, and I won't get stunned and I won't take any damage. And by that time, the group is ready to go. So it's a good thing to have a bow, have some arrows, and do that range attack. Now, you don't need a very hoopty bow. You're not using it. You're not looking to do a whole ton of damage in that pulling phase, because you just want to get his attention and you want to do it from a distance. So you don't need a hoopty bow that's going to do a lot of damage. Just something that's going to be able to allow you to shoot and pull them from a distance. So, all right. So let's talk about taunt. And taunt is probably the single most important skill that any tank has. All tanks have them, and it is an ability to capture the monster's attention. So let's say that you're fighting two monsters, Guard Stump and then Guard Cat Off, and then Guard Stump decides, well, you know what, the wizard cast on me, I don't like him, and he goes over to hit the wizard. Now your wizard's in cloth, he's a squishy, he's not going to last very long if this monster is going to start attacking him. So I will go and target Guard Stump and use my taunt ability to gain the aggro or the attention back onto myself and off of the wizard, so he's not taking that damage. So taunt is very nice. It has a pretty short cooldown, and I use it all the time. Even if the mobs are on me, I will still taunt them to kind of ensure that they stay on me and focused on me. That's my job as a tank, to take that damage and not allow the rest of the group to take that damage. So taunt is very, very important. I use it a lot. And even if there's several mobs on me, I will taunt one mob, and then once taunt comes back up on the cooldown, I will target the other mob who's still probably on me and taunt him too, just to ensure he stays on me too. So very important skill. One thing that is very cool and also unique to the Paladins, they're the only ones that have this, is the lay on hands skill. That is a one-time, one-shot complete heal. So let's say that your cleric is out of mana and you guys are in a pinch and you're almost dead, or somebody else in the group is almost dead. You can target that person and hit lay on hands, and it's going to completely heal them. Now the downside of that is that you can only use it every 90 minutes in real time. The upside of that is it's a complete heal, and I have seen it save our rears many times. So it's a really cool skill, really nice to have, and in a pinch saves lives. So the other thing I want to talk about is, as you can see, the actions panel over here, these are kind of ones that you use all the time: sit, stand, walk, run, and of course camping. That's how you get out of the game. But if you go to the abilities tab here, you can see that they have blank ones, and these blank ones you can set to whatever you want. So if you right click on it, it's going to open up this panel here, and you can choose which one you want on that first one that you clicked on. So I'm going to put sense heading on that first one. On the second one, I'm going to use bind wound, because that is very important to have as a tank. And on the other ones, I just set to whatever. I already have taunt up there. I already have lay on hands up there, so I don't need those. I will put fishing in one of them, because I'll start fishing later on just for fun. So I will take and move the sense heading one over to this button slot right here that's open, and to do that you left click and hold, puts it on your cursor, and you drop it in that sense. And that sense heading spot there. So what I do is I have that spot right there bound to my D key. D is in dog. And so what that does is, in my settings, I have it set so that every time I hit the D key, it also hits this number 1 button here. So every time I turn to the right, It's practicing my sense heading. So you will be working up your sense heading constantly without even having to think about it. And I think we talked about that in my UI video special. So you can go back and take a look at that, and I show how to set that up too. All right, so I have those set up. I have these set up. Now the last thing I always like to set up as a tank is you're going to be pulling, like I said again. So if you go to this last one, the socials page, obviously you have all these that are set in there. You can set yourself AFK, you can set yourself anonymous, you can say hail to whoever you're targeted and do those things. Those are preset in there, and you can use them if you want to. But here, if you click the arrow to number 2, you can see that you have the blank ones. Now, the blank ones you can set up however you want to, and you can make a macro to do and say pretty much anything you like. So as a tank, I'm probably going to be pulling, and I want to let the group know that, hey, I'm pulling something, please get ready. So I will right click on this, and it opens up an edit page where you can edit it and create the macro that you want. So I will call this incoming. I abbreviate it because it's not a very big button, you can see. And I change that to a color that I can see, or the one that means something to me. And then down here in the command, I will type in there the command to let my group know that, hey, I am pulling something. So to do that, you do a /G to speak in group, and then you want to put the command in there that such and such is incoming. Now to put in your a general target, you use the command of %T, capital T, and whatever your target is, it's going to name that. So right now it's guard stump, so it would be guard stump. It would be in there for me because that is my target, and that's what %T does. So I would say incoming, 1 per message. And the reason why I do that is I hit the button 1 time for each monster that I'm actually pulling, and it's coming back to the camp. So I'm going to accept that, and as you can see, then it pops up right there. And if I were to press that, I'm going to move my chat over here. If I were to press that, it's going to tell my group that, hey, guard stump is incoming. Now if I press it right now, I'm not in a group, so it's not going to work. So to show you how that does work, I am going to change that G to a say command, and then it should say it in say. See how it says guard stump incoming, 1 per message? So that's going to tell my group, because I would have it in group normally, say, hey, guard stump is coming, or 3 guard stumps is coming, please be prepared, we're about to battle. So very important button to have as a tank. And you can do other buttons. You can do another one that tells you that, hey, I'm switching targets, so everybody knows which one to assist. And I always explain to my groups firsthand, right before we start battling, that assist me, target my target and assist me, because if I have more than one on me, and there's an enchanter or a bard in the group that can mesmerize a second monster, I don't want everybody attacking that one and breaking that mesmerization. Is kind of defeating the purpose. So I want everybody to assist me in my target and do damage on that target, not anything else. So you can make hot buttons to say that. You can tell them that. You can make a hot button to say, please assist me, or that I changed to my target, assist me. So you can make those buttons into whatever you want. So very, very good to have. That incoming button is probably the most important to have it as a tank, to let everybody know in your group that, hey, I'm pulling something, or I'm pulling multiple somethings. Please be ready. So that is it. I think that's probably pretty much it. We talked about the weapons. Oh, by the way, the Paladin epic weapon later on in your later levels in the game, you get an epic weapon. All classes get theirs. The Paladins is pretty sweet looking. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's called the Fiery Defender, and it is a blade that is on fire, and it's I think it's a beautiful looking weapon. It's very nice. All the epics have great stats, and they usually have some kind of clicky ability on them too, so very well worth going and doing that epic quest. And you'll probably need friends or your guild to help you, but it's well worth it. So that is the details about playing playing a Paladin. I hope this helps you a little bit as you decide to make a Paladin. And you know what? If anything of it helps, you like what you see, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and YouTube will let you know every time I have a new video up there, and it certainly helps out my channel too. So once again, that is the Paladin. I hope this helps you, and you all take care of yourself out there, and we'll be up next with the Shadow Knight video, how to make a Shadow Knight, and that will complete our series on the tanks, the 3 tanks in EverQuest. So Weary Bard here. Thank you much for watching, and you all take care of yourself and keep that music rolling.